is a word used freely in a lot of wargame rules, and Heroes All is no exception. However, there's clearly a difference between the cover that sought to stay out of sight and the cover needed to avoid being shot. Take, for example, a wooden fence. If you stood behind it, you could not be seen, but anything firing at you through it is likely to hurt. That's the introduction to cover that's on page 14 in the Heroes All rules. So let's have a look at the various cover options and see how they affect the game. Now, as far as observation is concerned, cover is cover. So whether it's a hedge or a fence or a brick wall or a building, if you're behind it and the enemy can't see you, then they can't see you. Clearly, if it's something like a hedge or some trees, there's a chance that they might see you, and that's why we have an observation test. When you're being shot at, cover for protection falls into two categories: soft cover and hard cover. The rules and the firing rules, which we'll come on to shortly, assume that you have found some kind of soft cover. So you get a disadvantage if you're in the open and an extra advantage if you're behind hard cover. Now, the easiest way to describe and to define these is to say, well, if you're in the open, you're in the open. If anybody can see you, then you're clearly not covered at all. And hard cover is just that: a stone wall, a gun shield, a tank, anything that stops the enemy from shooting at you, and for whatever they're shooting at you with, actually hitting you. Now, hard cover is good cover, but there's still always a chance that you might just stick your head up, or you've got something sticking out and the enemy can still get at you. So if they can see you, they can shoot you even behind hard cover. So with a good shot, they can still make a mess of your day. Now, there's a load of definitions and helpful hints in the books on pages 15 and 16 to help you decide what's soft, what's hard, and what's no cover at all. So I'm not going to go into them here. What we will do, though, is to have a look at how the observation rules work. Now, first and foremost, the maximum observation range is 60 inches. Now, I use a 6x4 table. If your table is bigger or smaller, you might want to modify that, but I use 60 inches as a basic maximum range. Each figure that you're observing with counts as one, including crew served weapon crews and officers. There are some exceptions to that, so if you've got a jeep, for argument's sake, and you've got a crew of 2, they count as 2. The target that you're trying to spot, each figure again, and he counts as 1. The crew served weapon itself counts as 1. And then there's some other numbers in the rules on page 17 that say, for argument's sake, a jeep counts as 4, an armoured car counts as 8, and so on and so forth. So having worked out how many points of observers are looking at how many points of targets, you multiply the two together and you divide by 10 and you round up to the nearest whole number. So it comes out at 42, that number becomes a 5, and if it comes out at 28, that number becomes a 3. The number you come up with is the number of d6s that you're going to throw as part of your observation test, but bear in mind that the maximum number of dice you can throw is 5. But what have you got to score? Well, what you've got to score is the number of segments between you, the observer, and your intended target. Now, a segment is 10 inches. It could be 4 inches if it's only sparse woods, 2 inches if it's dense woods. It could be a wall or a hedge or something blocking line of sight. So you work out how many open ground 10 inches, how many walls, how many hedges, that sort of thing, and you come up with a number. Now, you get advantages if you're upper level in hills, if you're, for argument's sake, on Overwatch, or if you're a recce unit, but you also lose a number if you're trying to spot an elite target, for argument's sake. Elite troops tend to know how to hide better. And if you're occupying a target in, say, an intact building. Now, here's an example that appears on page 19 in the book of this same photo. The German infantry in the top left hiding behind the hedge, trying to spot the Humber recce car in the bottom right. The distance is 21 inches, so that's 3 segments of 10 inches. There's 2 hedges between them, bearing in mind that they ignore the hedge that they're in contact with. So there's a hedge the other side of the road and the hedge by the trees. So therefore they need a 5. Now, 4 men are spotting. The target armoured car counts as 4, so that's 16. 4 times 4 is 16. Divide by 10, rounded up, is 2d6. They throw 2d6, score a 1 and a 2, don't get a 5, and therefore they fail to spot the approaching armoured car. Then there's also rules for checking that there's nothing where you think something might be, and one or two other things that are useful for observing, like observing to see if where you thought troops used to be, they're still there. But there is one rather interesting rule, which is called a super throw, and that is that on occasions you might be trying to spot something and you need to get an 8. Well, obviously you can't get an 8 on a d6, but you can take what's called a super throw. And a super throw means that if you throw a d6, if you get a 6, you can then throw a d10, and you need to get 8 plus on that d10 to score 8. It's the only time in the rules where you get this super throw, but it's just a useful addition, just in case you do manage to spot those hiding soldiers. And that's us done in terms of cover and observation. So now we've worked out where our target troops are, we've seen if we can spot them, and if we can spot them, we now get the opportunity to fire at them, and that's what the next video is all about, firing weapons. I'll see you for that. See you soon. Look, you know how this works. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, hit the notifications bell, and when more stuff arrives, you'll be the first to know.